Hey everybody, it's V, and we are going to do a review of the Inside Star Citizen that came out today, This Life of Mine. This is a huge mining update, and of course that's what we do on the channel here, is doing some mining. I will say that I've watched this already, and for the most part, I think I'm fairly pleased with what I've heard. There's one thing that's kind of a big disappointment, at least at first blush. And the one thing I always want to say about this stuff is I always want to let it play out before, it becomes kind of a thing. But I will say this is something that Zell and I talked about a long time ago in our podcast. Was we always hoped that when they did something to fix multi-cruel mole mining, it did not come at the expense of the prospector in any way, shape, or form. Unfortunately, it does seem like that's the direction that they went. And so nerfing the prospector to me was never going to be a solution to multi-cruel mole mining. But unfortunately, someone as CIG has decided to go the other way with it. That being said, let's go ahead and watch this together. And there's going to be a lot of interruptions in this. I certainly will leave a link in the description for the actual video. You can go watch it in its entirety without any of my recharacterizations of what it is they're speaking to. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into it. So we're listening together.
Just when we think we're out, you all pull us back in. The mining profession journey has been one of the most collaborative in all of Star Citizen, with no shortage of player feedback and game systems that have been designed for flexibility and iteration. The upcoming Alpha 3.19 is set to bring with it a whole host of fixes and evolutions to improve the ways that players make their fortunes in the future.
So, 3.19, obviously, though, that's one of the cool things. It is just around the corner that we're going to see these changes. And it does seem like a fairly significant shakeup. And the one thing I will say that I love about Star Citizen's mining is that the handheld tool, the rock mining, remote ore collector, the prospector mining, the mole mining, it all shares a kind of a common UI. And I really feel like this iteration of the UI has been pretty good. And I am looking forward to some of the UI cleanup stuff that they talk about a little bit in the video here. But yeah, let's go ahead and keep moving.
Yeah, so the last time we said that we don't do anything about mining anymore and we leave it at rest. I think it was even when we introduced the mining gadget. So it was quite a while ago. And
now, when he says quite a while ago, mining gadgets were introduced of April of last year in 3.17. So it's been a year. That being said, the one thing I will say is I was testing those mining gadgets pretty heavily, and they did a balance pass about 2 or 3 patches before it went live. I thought that they were significantly in a better place than what they went with live. But it's cool in the sense that they do kind of hint in here and speak to the fact that it was more about giving maybe rented prospectors or somebody who's not as comfortable with, say, some of the resistances and some of the instabilities, a little bit of a leg up. It wasn't necessarily meant for the advanced miner type, I think, is what they hint towards here.
Yeah, well, here we are, sitting here again and explaining to you why we actually had to retouch or wanted to take mining to the next level. So here we are.
So the next level is an interesting, to me, there's some side grades that are kind of happening here, but we'll get into that.
Giving you something more to enjoy with mining gameplay. So when we left mining, we thought it was already in a good state.
And let me just say, I don't think mining's been in a terrible state. There's some things that are a bit milquetoast. And there's definitely some, I don't like the fact that Lyria is the only place that you'd really want a Quantanium mine, and some of these other things. Now, that being said, localization is one of the things that they are going to be adding here.
So even introducing with the mining gadget, we introduced from our perspective, a nice little different approach on mining. So you have to leave your ship, attach the mining gadget to the rock, then get back into the ship. And
love that part of it. The whole concept of and there are some people saying, it's counterintuitive if you have to get out of your prospector. I don't disagree necessarily, but it didn't bother me that you had to get out and attach these things. I thought that part of it was actually kind of fun and cool.
And then you do your mining procedure. And we also thought that it will help with difficulty, so that especially new players can buy a mining gadget.
There you go. The mining gadgets, while some of us more advanced, I just never used them. No, never's maybe a little too much. I kept them on me, and if I found a rock that was 6,200 or something, I may get out and attach one. I do know people who would get out and attach like 10 of those to the rocks and do things with it. That was never a profitable thing to do, though. I mean, it's silly to think that, that you would put 5 or 10 mining gadgets on there at how much they cost and think that you're going to earn any money. I know some people did do that, but it was more of a gimmick than an actual money-making venture.
To bring down resistances of the rock drastically, so they have an easier mining experience. What we didn't have in mind is that we also have to facilitate expert miners that still need a challenge there. So what we tackled is a general balancing pass. That is, we adjusted all the items, all mineable heads, all mining heads, all sub-items that you attach to the mining head, the mining gadgets. Everything now has different values.
So we don't know what this means exactly, right? This is kind of a big X factor. They very easily could have just made mining a lot harder. They could have retooled them where they have less power, less resistance that they are capable of reducing, less instability that they're capable of reducing. I would say that when you have the meta just right, like Quantanium mining may be a touch too easy. That being said, this is one of the fun things is going to be going through, taking a look at all the different mining heads, all the different consumables that are available, and relearning some of this stuff. I think that's going to be great.
We cleaned it up drastically. So it is now clearer what are the positives of what mining head, what are the positives of a sub-item, what are the positives of a mining gadget, and what are the negatives that come with it. And this is more important now because we also touched the minables themselves. So all the minables that you find now have different values in terms of their resistance, in terms.
So here we go, right? All of the minables themselves have different resistances. So we don't know if this is about making it easier or making it harder or making it more, just kind of, specializing a particular way. They do kind of allude to specializing here in a little bit, but it's going to be very interesting where, based on the fact that this is a complete reshape. I mean, they definitely shook the can here, and they're just kind of respraying it all, shook it up and kind of cracked the top, and so it sounds like they've really changed the values on all the minables and everything associated with mining in general. So until more information comes out, we really don't know what way this is headed.
Of their instability. So what we try to do is match certain mining heads with certain materials or resources that you find. So you will have mining heads that go better with, for example, aluminum, and others that might go better with iron. And this directly leads to the next thing. So we introduced finally iron, and iron is a ship-exclusive mineable for now. We also introduced some.
So a new ship-exclusive mineable iron. They do mention that iron's a basic, one of the things that they don't allude in here at all. I mean, they do speak to crafting someday, but nothing in 319 is going to change whether or not there's a reason to have iron, whether or not there's a reason to have corundum, whether or not there's a reason to have aluminum. None of that is actually addressed here, but they are, making the changes, to that and adding. It's obviously that's going to be an important resource for the future because they are adding it.
New resources like Genelite. Genelite is exclusively found in caves.
Big win here. Absolute super happy about this. A lot of us that do hand mining have always thought, why not? There should be a rare spawn in the caves that, that at least gets you going there. Now, they say that it's quite profitable. And so, this is a huge win for the FPS is that they have it looks like a new rare spawn in the caves. And, I do want to give props where props are due. This was something that I always thought would be a good idea, and I'm glad that this is being implemented.
And it's only mineable with FPS. And the reason why we wanted to introduce that is that, like, from the data that we gather from all of you playing is no one uses FPS mining.
I mean, and why would you? I mean, outside of lore and outside of doing something that that you want to do something because it's like maybe you're doing some like role play or something. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy hand mining. But if I want to make money in Star Citizen, no. I mean, rock mining is going to be considerably faster than hand mining. Prospector mining is going to be faster than rock mining. At least that's been my experience with it. And then, we haven't mole mining hasn't necessarily been, far more profitable than prospector mining in the past. I mean, multiple prospectors could certainly do anything that a mole could do, although we're going to find out that looks like it may change some.
As a game mechanic outside of the prison. So we wanted to make it more attractive to players to use a multi-tool with a mining attachment other than just having it attached because you found it. So right now we want you to try out the new caves, find the new mineable, and I can guarantee you that it is really profitable to bring that with you. It's not...
Once again, I absolutely love this idea.
Mining as a profession, because if it's your day-to-day job, but it's like a nice golden nugget that you can find on your exploration tool. So next time you are in the caves, better bring a mining attachment with your multi-tool.
Huge win, once again. Nothing but love for this particular mechanic. I think this is great. And I am very excited to give FPS a little love. I did a recent video on FPS mining. I enjoy FPS mining. And having a reason where, you might find something in a cave where it makes it more lucrative, or anything that could incentivize this kind of gameplay, I'm all for it.
We additionally cleaned up the way that resources are distributed throughout Stanton. And this is because we want to make resource gathering future-proof. With the introduction of crafting that will come further down the road, with its first implementation with the hull scraping gameplay, so you already got a glimpse of it. But what is important there is that we get a better control of where to find certain materials. And also, from our perspective, it's more interesting for players to know where they have to go to find a certain material type.
So this is kind of resource localization that I was talking about, that they have hinted at. So yeah, it just seems like there's going to be, and they go on to explain this a little more. There's going to be certain types of resources are going to be around certain systems. And that's going to be interesting. It will be interesting to see if it's like you absolutely can't find any, around some systems or not. But that does seem to be the way that it's leaning.
Types. So what we did is we defined standard materials and quality or like rarity-based materials. Standard materials are something like copper, like iron, like something that from real life is used in basically every item that you find around. And those have distinct locations now within Stanton. For example, aluminum you can only find around Crusader, where...
There you go. Aluminum around Crusader.
Copper you can only find around Microtech, which, so as a disclaimer, this is can change during our development, but just to give you an idea that we now have distinct location where you can find these defined standard materials. That doesn't mean that you cannot find the standard materials elsewhere. There are chances of you finding them elsewhere, especially asteroid belts get more attractive because they have a more diverse spectrum of materials.
And this makes a lot of sense. I mean, I could certainly understand why you would have, some areas are just more rich in iron. Of course, that makes perfect sense. More rich in aluminum, more rich in copper. But then also the asteroid belts are going to have, maybe not as high a concentrations, but a more diverse. So let's take a look at what's the reading up here too, because sometimes these are little Easter eggs. I don't know what it is in this case. Harvestable provider entity Yella asteroid ring. So the around Yella, harvestable preset, current position, asteroid field. Okay. Anyways, salvage debris. There's an Avenger Titan. You can see there's some type mineable rock. Salvage is an Ares Inferno. So yeah, there are some. It's funny. I found a Titan and an Inferno. I found those ships. I don't know about an Inferno. I guess I have, but I have found an Avenger Titan one time in around some asteroids. That was a mineable one or a salvageable one.
But on the planet side, from Earth, we just have very distinct locations where you can find those rare earths. And what we also introduced is that each of the standard material always have certain more rare or rarer materials associated with them. So this gives you a glimpse of where we are going.
I don't know that I understand exactly what he means there. Let me back up for a second.
Always have certain more rare or rarer materials associated with them.
So I don't know if that means that around aluminum, you're always going to find whatever the rare, whatever around the basic one, there's always going to be, if you find let's say you get into kind of a high concentration of iron, that's also going to mean, something like, one of the ites, maybe there's laranite around that or terranite around that or backslide around that type of thing.
So this gives you a glimpse of where we are going, where our intention is to have star systems with exclusive materials that you need for your crafting. So you have to travel to a certain star system to get the material that you need for whatever item you would like to create.
So a couple things here. Love that idea. It doesn't bother me to have to go to a certain star system to get a certain thing. Second of all, notice the orange icons here. I love and of course I understand in this particular case, the rock icon. It seems almost like the rock icons are following the ship UI a little bit. But I do hope that maybe that means that there's, maybe a helmet or something that's got kind of the orange icons. I'm all about them.
There are two more things that we updated. So one thing that we noticed is that mining is a difficult profession.
And here's where I'm not sure I 100% agree. If you put a lance at MH1 and fire a Brant on a Quantanium, it wasn't difficult at all, quite honestly. And that's, don't get me wrong. If you do things wrong or don't pay attention, sure, you blow yourself up. But if you have a Lancet and a Brant on, I don't agree. I don't think that mining is difficult at all. Yes, I understand that I do a lot of it, and I do understand that there's a learning curve. But once you kind of understand the meta, I don't, outside of it, there is some tedium to it. Like if it's a big rock, you may have to call in a friend or whatever. And we'll see the changes that are coming to that. But I don't necessarily know that it was terribly difficult once you had the right kit.
And we want to make the obstacle less threatening for...
The other thing is I want to say point blank, I have mined a lot of rocks in my day. And you know, if you
There are
look
two
at
more
what's
things
going on here,
that we updated. So one thing,
I just want to say, if you can look at this, I've never
the
seen a pile of rocks
obstacle
like this.
less, like, less
What? I mean,
threat-
holy mackerel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I mean, that's
for
pretty
new
crazy.
players.
That's an
And that
unusual break. I've
means
never
that
seen a break
we
like that.
improved our mining UI a little.
The old mining UI was one of the most
I welcome these UI changes. They're showing you, you're going to notice the biggest changes are around this area here, but there's changes in general.
developed UIs in the game. It was one of the most readable already, but we discovered some improvements we could add to it to make it more enjoyable to the players. But we had like some slight issues with, you could say, clutter, basically, with the center part of the screen with too many elements flashing. So for the next update,
yeah, I mean, I like this. First of all, they are mining iron here. Kudos. This is kind of cool. You have your optimal window out here on, you know, this is your range, right? You know, you're scanning stuff. Of course, they now have your mining modules are out here. There aren't any modules that seem to be attached to this laser right now. You can see that it's the Arbor laser head. And you can see that this part of it stayed pretty closely the same. It is interesting. The fracture mode icon is slightly different. You can see there's an extraction mode that will be a little different there. But for the most part, this doesn't bother me at all. I think this looks clean, and it does make sense to kind of put some of this stuff, you know, out, you know, and to have like I actually like having the velocity meter right there. I mean, there are times when you got your velocity set pretty high, and even if you just kind of tap, you're going a little too fast. So, you know, this isn't a bad.
we moved some elements together. For example, we moved the mining throttle next to the power charge of the asteroid. Since those two elements are semantically related, we've added a range bar to the left with all the ranges you need to keep in mind, like scanning, blast radius, and mining range of your head. We shuffled less relevant UI elements to the bottom of the screen to clear up space on the center part and on what you are looking at. We've also changed the display of scanning to make it less disruptive to the mining experience, and we've improved a little on a bunch of things like color and element positions within each card of the screen to make it more readable.
So now it is easier for you to see what distance you have to keep from the rock, what dangers you encounter on the rock, how your mining head actually is set up right now, and all the parameters that you need to know if the rock that you are targeting is actually mineable. For that, we even added a little helper that basically tells you, hey, it is very doable, it's an easy mining approach, it's a challenging mining approach, or it's an impossible one. Because now there...
No, maybe I missed that back here. Let me just kind of scooch back for a sec. I don't see, I mean, I see where it says green. Now, it's interesting, they're in extraction mode here, and I don't know this is actually extractable. I think that this is still something I need to break down. I could be wrong. But I don't see that thing that he's talking about where it says easy or hard or whatever.
Possible one, because now there will be impossible one. And this is where...
Because now there will be impossible ones. See, this is one thing. Yeah, you know, we'll have to see what they mean by that. I just, you know, it's going to be interesting.
Our last change for this update comes in, which is multi-crew mining.
See, there, you know, this is kind of heading into the place where, oh boy, I got to be real careful because I don't want to be down on it. But there's a change that's coming here that I'm not a fan of. And so that being said, we'll kind of let them get into it. But he did say now things are going to become impossible with, you know, that was his word. And then he said, you know, on the flip side of that, you know, let's talk about the mole.
We thought that the size of the rocks and the power it required for multiplayer mining was sufficient. But
here's where they begin to lose me a little bit. For instance, the arbitrary maximum rock size in space is 5122. I always thought that that should be significantly larger, as well as rocks on planet surfaces. They should have 12,000 mass, 15,000 mass, 17,000 mass. Why not have 35,000 mass and have it require 2 moles? I always thought that the sweet spot for the mole was going to be increasing the size of the rock. And maybe because they're such huge rocks, they'd have an increased resistance, an increased instability. And then the 3 lasers would come significantly to pass. Now, they very well could have done something along those lines. Instead of keeping the same size rocks and punishing the prospectors, is just put a certain power limitation as to mass that somehow or another fix that issue. Now, if you bring in enough prospectors, then you bring in enough prospectors. But they very well could have scaled it in a way where moles just had significantly more power, and you wouldn't have to bring in, say, you could for 1 mole you might have to bring in 9 prospectors for these larger rocks. So there was a different way they could have went, and I really wish they would have gone that way, but unfortunately they didn't.
But especially with the mining gadgets, you could bring down the resistance so much that like multi-crew mining wasn't as needed.
The mining gadgets didn't have anything to do with that. The bottom line is when you have a 7,000 pound rock, I mean, you get north of like an 8,000 pound rock, it wasn't profitable to get out 4 or 5 mining gadgets and put it on there. Once again, it was a gimmick. And yeah, I mean, the thing is there were no rocks in the game that prospector couldn't, 2 prospectors couldn't pop. I was hoping that they were going to add like a 13,000 or a 15,000 mass rock. But it doesn't sound like that's the direction they're going to head
anymore as we actually intended. And that's the benefit of having a game in a live environment where you, as the community, create videos, create reviews, post like comments on the spectrum, that you are basically not as satisfied with the gameplay as you would like to be. And this is now our opportunity, and we saw the need in it to make it even more future-proof for all the upcoming systems.
Yeah, this is the dangerous part, is like this is another pass on mining, and this is the way that it could be stuck for a long time. And so, yeah, it doesn't look like they decided to increase. It looks like they're going to change resistances, they're going to change instabilities, they're going to tune things down, and they're going to nerf the prospector.
So we wanted to encourage players using the mole in a cooperative environment. And what we think lore-wise was that what makes sense and was an easy win for us was that.
Yeah, easy, I think, is the operative word here. Currently when you mine, if 1 laser is hitting the rock, and let's say it's a lancet, it reduces the instability and the resistance. A second laser hits it, it also kind of stacks, right? The prospectors stack the same way as the mole. So if you get 3 lasers, on there, of course, then it stacks even more. But it looks like they've unraveled that, and now they've decided to leave the stacking feature, like when 3 lasers hit it, because for whatever reason, there's a central computer unit or whatever is kind of the argument that they're making, that it lowers the resistances, or it lowers the instability. But unfortunately, they decided to increase the instability or punish. He uses the word punish here.
That because you are sharing one system, one computer on your mole, you basically have a way to.
Notice it's the instability number here. Notice there's 1 laser on it. The instability number here, resistance of 27%. Now, first of all, that's a hell of a resistance. Number 1. This is a 35% agricium too, though. This is an interesting rock, and 13% borace. Oh, wow. This is actually, I don't know that I've ever seen a rock like this. So this is interesting here. Let's just kind of take this. This is 35% agricium and 27% hephaestonite. That's more than 50% of that rock being actually, and then 13% of its borase. So, I mean, this is actually, 37, 40, this is like 70. I probably should have just looked at the inner. This is 75% good material in this thing, interesting resistance, but no, you're going to watch the instability drop significantly here. Watch.
Synchronize your mining lasers. And by that,
see how the resistance dropped down 19%?
You get the benefit.
And the instability is dropping down.
While sitting in a mole to decrease the instability of the targeted rock drastically.
So it lowered the instability and the resistance
significantly. So if you
significantly.
compare this with a prospect.
Now, you've got I think, if I can scooch back just a touch.
Ability of the targeted rock drastically. So if you compare this with...
okay, you have a single laser here. Look at the resistance is at 7% and the instability is at 1.69. Single laser here. Now, this is a mass that would normally take 2 prospectors to break, or, and look at this is just a quartz, by the way. This isn't even nearly, this is like a junker rock compared to kind of the last one we were looking at.
A prospect.
See, the second laser now just started. Watch what happens to the resistance. Instability, really.
A prospector hitting the same rock with, like, if you have 3.
There you go. So, I mean, you can see.
So if you compare...
we're going to watch this again because this is an important thing. 7% resistance, 1.69 instability.
A prospector hitting the same rock with, like, if you...
So the resistance does drop to 3%.
You have 3 prospectors.
But the instability goes up significantly.
Just hitting the same rock, you will get a...
Now, you have the third laser hitting at instability 9.25. So this is a nerf, okay? There's no way, this is them fixing the mole by making the prospectors less, work together less friendly. I just don't like this. I mean, and like they said, this is me telling you as somebody who's mined exclusively in this game, probably as much as anybody the last 2 years. I don't like this change. And I'm going to say that point blank. Do I think am I going to go over the edge and it's the most horrible thing? Of course not. But I don't like this change. I don't think you should be punishing the prospectors. I think that that's absolutely fundamentally wrong. I think that you should have just increased the mass on the rocks, and then with the giant mass of the rocks, increased the resistances, and then allowed the mole to have the ability to bring down the resistances. Don't make 2 prospectors make the rock far more unstable. I fundamentally disagree with this course of action. And this is, to me, is what you've decided to do is discourage people from, flying around in a couple prospectors as opposed to grabbing a mole. So you're not trying to make the mole. You didn't improve the mole to the point where people want to jump in it. You've just nerfed the other, way to do this. And so, and don't get me wrong, we'll see how it plays out. But at first blush, I don't like this at all. And, I'm definitely not going to mince words about it.
Punishment, basically, in terms of...
There you go. Punishment. They're punishing you for bringing a prospector in order to encourage you to fly a mole. So I don't know that that's going to have the effect that they want. Considering it does take them a long time. I mean, look, he said earlier in this a video, hey, we have some metrics that say you don't FPS mine. Really? I mean, I don't know, you're absolutely right. I'm sure besides, people doing it just kind of for fun or whatever, who is doing that, right? Because there's no profit in it. It's the same kind of thing here. I think you're going to find that, I don't know that you're going to be increasing the mole use that much with this situation. I think you're going to find people are just going to actually mine less. And I don't know that that's I think what's going to happen in this particular situation. You had an opportunity to increase the size of the rocks and use that as the reason that made the mole superior, because there were just certain size rocks that were beyond the prospector's capability. Just like, just like a hand miner can't crack a rock node, a rock can't crack a prospector node. There should have been a node size that a prospector couldn't crack, but it seems like you've decided to leave the mass the same, but just, once again, if you want to have something that's north of the prospector's ability, don't bring a second prospector, heaven forbid, because you're going to get, that's, no. The last thing I'll say is, maybe I'm wrong about this, and here's the thing that we don't see. Maybe Prospector 1 fires a Brant, it goes down 75%. Prospector 2 fires a Brant, and Prospector 3 fires a Brant, and the instability is right back down low again. I mean, that's the one thing we don't see here. And that very well could be the case, but, like I said, I just wish they would have gone with larger mass rocks and that type of thing. The whole arbitrary size of 5122 in space and that type of thing. I wish that stuff would have been addressed more.
Of instability, so we wanted to make sure that it's still solvable. If you are an expert miner, you can counter the instability there, but it's...
And that's what they're talking, probably with consumables. There's a way to tackle it.
It's more effort that you have to put into it compared to a mole, where with you have a high instability rock and you have 2 friends or 3 friends, you better pick your mole over the
I mean, here's a 21% Quantanium rock. That's half of what it could be. And let's see what that,
because you will have an...
See, well, they didn't even show us the third one. The second laser had updated the UI and it had already gone over to 12 instability.
Easier mining experience picking the mole.
So once again, it's like, it's just going to be, I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I don't like this change.
And there's one more thing that ties in with the difficulty or increase of difficulty that we intended with this update, and that...
The increase of difficulty that we intended with this update. I think that's what we're going to find. I think we're going to find that things are, it's going to be more difficult and slower.
Basically brings us back to the resources and the update that we did for the resources. Something we didn't have before, but we will now introduce, is that each resource composition will have an effect on the weight or on the mass of the mineable.
So each resource composition, let me see what I understand here.
Resource composition will have an effect on the weight or on the mass of the mineable. Each
resource composition will have an effect. Oh, so like maybe just the different materials that's mixed up on it.
So that means there are certain materials that are heavier and therefore harder to crack. So you
more resistance.
You definitely need to bring friends to be able to crack the stone with the super dense materials in comparison to resources that are less dense. And
so here's the thing, right? It's like, so what's the most, I don't know what the most dense one is, but if it's right now, the only thing worth mining is Quantanium, as far as it's so far off the charts. It's difficult to, I mean, if you enjoy mining and you want, and also without crafting in the game. And of course, some of these problems would be solved down the road, but he's saying that there's some things, like if it's a really thick thing, like it's a really heavy thing, well, you better bring friends, but is the money that you make going to offset that? Is there, there better be a reason for it, or people just aren't going to do it.
And are more porous, so you will have an easier life.
So he's saying if it's dense, it's going to be really much more difficult, and if it's porous, it's going to be easier. That makes sense, but exactly what does that mean? Because you can almost see in his face, he's almost like, I don't know about all this.
Easier mining approach with them. This will not make single-player mining worthless. It will make it more interesting.
He's even saying it's not going to make it worthless. But you look at the look on his face. I don't even think he's sold on this. I mean that when I say it. he's been, I mean, and I appreciate this guy. He's been really contemplative looking through this whole thing. I don't know. I bet you there was a battle internally here about some of these changes. And there would be, right? I mean, I'd be incredibly passionate about the way that I'd want this done. And I think that they've missed a little bit here.
For sure, because like we also will update a little bit of the trading, so it is even more valuable, or you get more profit out of even the less rare materials because of the redistribution of the resources.
Now that's good. That sounds to me like they're saying, hey, we are going to make some things more, that are more common, more profitable, because maybe they're more difficult to get because of their density. We'll have to see how that scales.
Suddenly there is a demand at the other side of the universe for aluminum, for it.
And this is that thing that, what he just said is very important. Suddenly there's a demand on the other side of the universe. Absolutely. I understand what he's saying there. Unfortunately, we're not there yet, right? There's going to be no demand in Stanton in 319 for aluminum that we know of at this point.
Example. So you might wonder when this update will be available to you. And I have some good news. So you might have seen the content that we put in this video already. So it is already in a playable state for us, but not only that. Right now we are on a good track to have it inside or have it part of the next major release after our 3.18 patch. We are very confident that it will be in 3.19.
And, and of course that means that it could be, anywhere from here to a year from now. And I don't say that tongue in cheek. I mean that respectfully. It's, maybe 3.19, they're just going to do some feature stuff and it's going to be a little quicker. But we'll see.
So, what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that resources are being redistributed throughout the Stanton system and include new additions to vehicle and FPS minables. That the UI continues to evolve and improve the player experience. And that balancing changes to everything from heads to consumables to gadgets and to the resources themselves means that Alpha 3.19 will bring a thoroughly updated experience to miners when it arrives later this year. Now, as for Alpha 3.18, it's available to all players now in OpenPTU, so don't miss your chance to get in there and bang on the pipes, as it were, to help us get things to a live release. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you all here next week.
So anyways, I just want, of course I love Space Dan. Jared's a great guy. You could just tell he'd be a fun guy to just sit and chat with. I think a very pleasant human. And the gentleman who spoke here, they did a fine job. They were very articulate. And I really want to say that I don't want to get over my skis and say that, it's, all doom and gloom. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I do think that there's a couple of different ways that these changes could have went. And unfortunately, I think that they went in a direction, nerfing the Prospector for, as a way to encourage multi-crew. It almost seemed like an easier approach. It didn't seem like they did the hard thing, which is, put in larger size rocks and, and that type of thing. And it's interesting to me. I mean, and considering that they're getting into densities, it doesn't have, the rock could be physically the same size. It could have just weighed a ton more. Or maybe they could have made the mole, better at the more dense rocks. There could have been, hey, the Prospector's really good at the more porous ones. And there just seems to be some other ways they could have considered to do this. That being said, listen, the last thing a couple things I want to say is, first, I am somebody who I really want to kind of let things happen. I'm going to give you my opinion on how I think it's going to go, but just let's let things happen. And then see how it goes. I mean, I don't want to be a total, the last thing I want to do is doom and gloom it, entirely. It's, but, I want to put things on a scale, right? I want to be honest about how I feel about a change, and especially something that's so near and dear to my heart, and that kind of a thing. So anyways, this was a kind of a very live, raw review of this particular one. It's so near and dear to my heart. I thought I would absolutely kind of chat my way through this. And thanks for hanging out with me. As you can imagine, there's going to be a ton of content on my channel about all the different changes that are coming. And I'm really looking forward to it. So thank you so much for your time. Have a lovely evening. And I will see you all around the verse.